There is no other canvas like Cape Cod. Stretched from the remnants of the last ice age, its unique composition of sand, water, earth, and sea is equally suited to landscapes painted by geographic circumstance and deliberate choice. The art is in the balance.
Cape Cod's written story begins some 400 years ago, but its human story extends thousands more. When Europeans first arrived to stay, they found paths connecting all parts of the Cape. The trails used by the native peoples became the template for the transportation networks in place today. Then, as now, where and how people traveled defined where they lived. As trails became roads and harbors became ports, people and economic activity followed.
From its shifting shoreline to its economic pursuits, century by century and day by day, the Cape has had to reinvent itself. Industries that helped build the Cape relied on human ingenuity and resourcefulness, couldn't keep pace when a competitive world opened up to the west.
Salt is a good example. It was an industry born out of the Revolution and pioneered on Cape Cod. Salt was so vital, in 1776, Congress offered a bounty of $0.33 for every bushel produced. John Sears of East Dennis sought to answer the call. His initial returns were modest. By the 1790s, his saltworks design became the standard, earning him a patent in 1799. At the height of production in the 1830s, more than 800 saltworks dotted the Cape Cod shoreline, producing 300,000 bushels a year. Within 10 years, the Cape industry was in serious decline. Competition from New York and Pennsylvania changed the market. Not only could they produce more salt less expensively, new transportation networks provided a decisive edge. In what would prove symbolic of the Cape industry to come, developers bought the last saltworks in Falmouth in 1870. Falmouth Heights was built overlooking the dormant vats before they were raised. The last Cape Cod saltworks closed on the Bass River in 1888. This pattern would be repeated for many of the Cape's iconic industries. While there are details specific to each, the overall story remains the same. From Sandwich's glassworks, to the deep-sea captains, to the whalers and fishermen who helped make the Cape, none could keep pace with new competition and practices. The prosperity and growth Barnstable County saw in the first half of the 1800s was matched in the second by economic stagnation and population decline. While the rest of Massachusetts surged with immigrant-fueled increases, the Cape was losing people. From 1855 to 1895, Cape Cod's population shrank 22%. In that same 40 years, the rest of Massachusetts nearly doubled. The shift was so pronounced that in 1897, authors of a state report sought to reverse the trend. The report suggested offering land incentives to Azorean immigrants to establish farms on the Outer Cape. The idea was to rebuild both population and an agricultural economy in one bold swoop, but that wouldn't be the path forward.
What endured were the industries that relied on the unique nature of the land. Cultivation of the indigenous cranberry, recreation opportunities, and the Cape itself.
The shift in population and economy left land empty and available. Beginning in 1870, outside interests started buying the coast, banking on Cape Cod's growing reputation as a seaside retreat. Most of these original land companies never realized their expected riches. Most went bankrupt or sold to new investors. What they left behind were large tracts of subdivided land that remain today. Once recorded at the Registry of Deeds, the development die was cast, even if it took a century to realize. As Cape Cod entered the 20th century, its reputation as a summer resort was well established. Life of the earliest summer people included ample leisure time and the means to spend it away from home, which tended to be out of reach for working families. The automobile changed that, making traveling vacations possible for the average person. Affordable transportation also brought the need for more and better roads. Construction of modern 4-lane bridges over the canal eased travel even more and provided uninterrupted access on and off the Cape. Roadside accommodations and new service industries followed. as did cottage colonies and seasonal neighborhoods. From 1920 to the end of the century, the Cape's population moved steadily higher. The demands of an expanding population are amplified by the annual surge of seasonal visitors, which more than double the year-round numbers on any given summer day. Summer populations pushed hard on limited infrastructure. The growth and development from 1920 to the 1960s set the tone for what happened in the next 2 decades. From 1970 to 1990, the number of housing units doubled to 135,000. With these new influences, towns felt new pressures on infrastructure for roads, schools, and other basic needs. Among the responses to this was creation of the Cape Cod Commission in 1990. Massachusetts supported local planning starting in 1914, with laws providing for planning boards. Over the next decade, land use laws were added, revised, and expanded to give towns new authority to control what could be built and where. Falmouth was an early adopter, approving a planning board in 1925 and a zoning bylaw a year later. In other towns, planning was slower to emerge. Truro and Mashpee were the last towns to adopt zoning, both in 1960.
The Cape Cod Commission was created in response to 3 decades of explosive residential growth that changed the peninsula's core. The Regional Policy Plan is intended to guide this development. While local planning remains with each of the Cape's 15 distinct towns, the Regional Policy Plan provides the framework for the broader strokes of regional growth. But the manner and degree in which it's applied are always local decisions. The art is in the balance.